Most people spend their entire lives chasing happiness as if it's a treasure buried somewhere far away, but they never stop to ask why it always seems a little out of reach no matter what they do. From childhood, we're trained to believe that happiness is something we achieve after we hit certain milestones, after we get the grades, after we find the job, after we make enough money, after we meet the right person. And because of this conditioning, we build a mindset where joy becomes a reward, not a natural state, and so we live constantly postponing our own emotional freedom. We're taught to function like machines that must earn the right to feel good. But the real problem isn't that life is difficult, it's that we were raised to tie our self-worth to achievements, outcomes, and external validation. The truth is, most people are not unhappy because their lives are terrible. They are unhappy because they're trapped inside an invisible cage, the belief that happiness depends on circumstances. So they spend years running on a treadmill of constant effort, hoping one day they'll finally arrive at a destination that doesn't even exist. They wake up each morning believing that something is missing, that something must change before they can relax, laugh, or simply breathe. And this belief quietly steals decades from them, turning the present moment into something they must survive instead of something they can enjoy. Another reason so many people fail to feel truly happy is that they constantly compare their lives to unrealistic standards. We live in a world where everyone's highlights are on display: perfect vacations, perfect relationships, perfect careers, and we forget that what we see is a carefully crafted illusion. As a result, people measure their worst moments against someone else's best moments and call themselves failures. Comparison used to be something we did occasionally, now it is something we do subconsciously, every single day. And every comparison chips away at our ability to appreciate what we already have. Instead of feeling gratitude for our progress, we feel pressure to keep up with people we've never met. Instead of appreciating our own journey, we obsess over someone else's timeline. This endless comparison creates a deep emptiness, convincing us that our happiness is never enough, our effort is never enough, our life is never enough. And so we start to believe that happiness is something reserved for successful people, without realizing that even those people struggle behind the scenes. Happiness becomes an unattainable ideal, and we become prisoners of an imaginary competition that no one wins. The more we compare, the more we disconnect from our own identity, our own values, our own joy, and this emotional disconnection is one of the biggest reasons real happiness feels so distant. Many people also never feel truly happy because they are carrying emotional wounds that they never learned to heal. These wounds turn into silent shadows that follow them everywhere: fear of judgment, fear of abandonment, fear of failure, fear of being seen as not enough. These fears shape decisions, limit opportunities, and hold people back from joy without them ever realizing why. Childhood pain, broken trust, disappointment, and past heartbreak often become invisible chains wrapped around the mind. And because society encourages people to stay strong and move on, they never process those emotions, they simply bury them. But emotions don't disappear, they hide, waiting for triggers. A simple comment, a small conflict, a forgotten promise, and suddenly old pain resurfaces. And when unresolved pain becomes a part of everyday life, happiness becomes difficult because the heart is too heavy to feel light. Many people are not unhappy because their present is bad, they are unhappy because they are living through old memories that were never healed. True happiness becomes impossible when the past is louder than the present. So people live in cycles, repeating old patterns, choosing the same relationships, attracting the same emotional outcomes, not because they want to, but because pain became familiar. And what is familiar often feels safer than what is healthy. Another reason true happiness feels rare is that most people live on autopilot. They repeat the same routines every day, never questioning why they do what they do. Wake up, work, eat, scroll, sleep, and repeat. When life becomes predictable, the brain stops noticing the small joys that used to feel magical. The colors fade, the excitement dies, and days merge into each other like an endless loop. This monotony slowly drains the soul. Even people who have comfortable lives often feel empty because comfort without purpose eventually becomes boredom. They know something is missing but cannot define what. They think the solution is more entertainment, more possessions, more distractions, but distractions only numb the emptiness, they do not fill it. Happiness is impossible in a life where you're physically present but mentally absent. Many people have forgotten how to truly live, how to take risks, how to feel wonder, how to experience new things. They confuse survival with living. They confuse routine with stability. They confuse numbness with peace. And because of this, happiness feels like a stranger, something they remember vaguely but haven't felt in a long time. A major barrier to happiness that people rarely talk about is the constant need for control. Most people believe they will be happy only when everything goes exactly as they expect. When life aligns with their plans, they feel calm. But the moment something goes wrong, someone disappoints them, a plan fails, money becomes tight, or a situation changes, their emotional stability collapses. They have built a happiness that depends on perfection, forgetting that life is unpredictable. This attachment to control creates fear, tension, and stress that never truly goes away. Happiness built on control is fragile, happiness built on acceptance is powerful. But acceptance requires emotional maturity, and most people were never taught how to handle uncertainty. They exhaust themselves trying to bend reality to their desires, instead of adapting with grace. They fight life instead of flowing with it. They resist change and call it stability. They fear unpredictability and call it danger. And in this constant struggle to control everything, they lose the ability to enjoy anything. The truth is, life will never be fully under your control, only your response to it is. But until people learn this, true happiness will remain something they chase, not something they experience. So how can a person change this and finally feel deeply, genuinely happy? The first step is awareness, understanding that happiness is not something you find, it is something you create from within. It begins with recognizing your patterns, the comparisons, the negative self-talk, the emotional wounds, the fear of failure, the need for approval. Once you become aware, you can begin to interrupt these patterns. Happiness grows the moment you start questioning your thoughts instead of believing every negative idea your mind produces. When you start noticing your triggers instead of reacting blindly. When you learn to sit with your emotions instead of escaping them. When you choose gratitude, not because life is perfect, but because you are present. Happiness is found in moments, in breathing, in noticing, in small joys, in human connection, in personal growth. It begins the moment you stop chasing the future and start appreciating the present. The moment you stop waiting and start living. The moment you stop seeking permission and start expressing your true self. Another powerful shift is learning to define success and happiness on your own terms. Once you stop comparing your journey with others, you begin to appreciate the beauty of your own pace. You start to realize that happiness comes from authenticity, living in alignment with what matters to you, not what society expects. You stop trying to impress and start trying to evolve. You stop chasing recognition and start chasing meaning. You stop waiting for someone else to validate your worth and start building it yourself. The more aligned your life becomes with your real desires, the lighter your heart feels. You begin to create purpose in your routine, passion in your actions, peace in your thoughts. Happiness stops being something you chase and becomes something that naturally flows through you. You start enjoying small things again, a quiet morning, a deep conversation, a personal achievement, a moment of stillness. You rediscover your ability to feel alive in the present moment, not in some distant future that may never come. And that is when happiness becomes real, stable, and deeply fulfilling. Ultimately, true happiness comes from letting go of who you think you should be, letting go of fears that no longer serve you, letting go of expectations that keep you trapped, letting go of people who drain your energy, letting go of past pain and imagined futures. It comes from embracing the present with an open heart, with courage, with curiosity. Happiness is not a destination, it is a habit, a practice, a mindset. It comes from choosing self-awareness over autopilot, acceptance over control, gratitude over comparison, healing over avoidance, courage over fear. The moment you stop placing conditions on your happiness, your life begins to change. You start to feel a deeper sense of peace that does not depend on circumstances. You begin to experience joy in places where you never noticed it before. You learn that happiness is not found in perfect days but in meaningful choices. And once you make these shifts, once you take responsibility for your inner world, happiness becomes your natural state, not a reward you earn. This is how people transform their lives forever, by realizing that happiness was never far away. It was always inside them, waiting to be unlocked.